Hi, and welcome to the latest edition of Old Scribes. My partner in crime, George Willis, unable to be here today. He's out traveling, covering golf, I believe. So hopefully he's enjoying himself. Today we got very special guest. We've had him before, Hall of Fame broadcaster Al Bernstein. Al, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. I'm sorry George can't join us.
Yeah, he's out on the road. So next time.
Yeah.
So, hard to believe, but Tuesday is the 40th anniversary of the epic, marvelous Marvin Hagler Thomas Hearns fight, April 15th, 1985. And you were there. You called it. When everybody watches that first round and says it's the greatest first round in boxing history, it's your voice that people hear. Does it seem like 40 years?
It really doesn't. Everybody always says that about time that elapses, but it doesn't seem like 40 years. And I can remember, so much of, even though that was so long ago, almost everything about that weekend is indelibly etched in my mind, not just the fight itself, but all the circumstances around it, the magic atmosphere at Caesar's Palace, the broadcast itself, in which I was, and we'll get into it, but in which I was surrounded by Hall of Fame talent. Kurt Gowdy was the host. Al Michaels did the play-by-play with me. That was the three people on the broadcast team. So for me, it was a heady time.
So heading into it, and you've said before that was, at that time, that was your biggest assignment, and what an assignment it was, right? So when did you receive word that you would be doing that broadcast and who you would be working with? At what point did you realize that it was going to happen?
Yeah, I had done the Hagler-Duran fight, which was really, of course, a significant event, but Hagler-Hearns took on another life of its own. And because I had done the Hagler-Duran fight, which I did with Sal Marciano, who was then my partner on the Top Rank Boxing series, I think, and I was doing the Top Rank Boxing series, and I was doing some other things. They decided they were going to ask me, but the funny story is, so I found out maybe, I don't know, 4 months before, three months before, but the story behind the story about who I worked with is, I found out about a month before that Kurt Gowdy was going to be the host, which I thought was really cool. I'd never met him, and of course I grew up watching him. But then closer to that time, we found out Al Michaels was going to be the play-by-play guy. And the story behind the story on that is that I was being considered at that time to be the color commentator on the ABC fights. And ABC asked Bob Arum if he could hire Al Michaels to do the play-by-play because they wanted to hear us together. And then they hired Al Michaels. And so that became the trio that did the fights.
So at that point, you were being considered for the ABC fights. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And ironically, the person that ended up doing them, Alex Wello, was not an announcer. He was a producer. And he ended up getting it for whatever reasons. But that was what happened. But because of that, it was me and Al Michaels doing it. So it turned out to be, it was quite an event for me. I was like, oh my God, I was only 5 years into my broadcasting career. And the enormity of it was, just really something. And it wasn't like I was a neophyte because I'd been doing it for 5 years, and I had been around big fight atmospheres. And certainly doing the Top Rank series almost every week. But this felt like another level, right? It felt like another world to be in.
And so you describe, I think in your book, you described kind of like at one point, was it this fight where you kind of said, you kind of sat back right before it started and you looked around and you kind of took it all in. Was this the fight
Yeah,
that?
it was this fight. The weird thing was the crowd was kind of not as it. I couldn't tell if the buzz was there. Strangely, it was at the outdoor arena at Caesar's Palace, which was amazing. Right, it was such a cool arena, but it was outdoors, so the sound got dispersed a little, not like an arena where it comes back on you. And I remember saying to Bruce Trampler, the great matchmaker for Top Rank Boxing, now a Hall of Famer, I said, is this crowd kind of subdued to you? And he said, in a way, you're right. But what happened was, I think they were so anticipating what was going to happen that there was almost, instead of cheering or yelling, they were just anticipatory. Now, we get the walk-ins. And the walk-ins start to liven them up. And by the time we get to the second walk-in with Hagler, the place is already on fire. And at that moment, when the second right after the second walk-in, I did something that technically producers wouldn't love you to do, but I just had to. I took my headset off for like about 5 or 10 seconds, and I listened to everything, and I looked around, and I tried to just get the feel of it. And it became a practice for me. I do that now in almost every fight that I do. I just want to feel what's going on in the arena.
The vibe of the arena, huh? The vibe of the crowd.
And that was extraordinary.
Did you, because they went on that multi-city tour before the fight, and that's kind of where it's said that they started hating each other.
Yeah.
Did you go to any of those stops?
I was at 2 of them, and they were spaced in different parts of the press tour, which gave me a little bit of a different view. One was toward the beginning, and then one was toward the end. Well, it's 100% true. Sometimes things become boxing folklore that, this press tour made them like testy with each other. Well, it's not folklore. It's true. By the time they got to the end of this press tour, as Marvin said, I wanted to rip Tommy's head off, and I'm sure Tommy felt the same way about him. They just, they were under each other's skin in a huge way. And now, of course, something like a big press tour is hardly needed because you can reach everybody on the internet. But back then you couldn't, so you had to be a dog and pony show and go around the world. But that press tour really did, I think, influence the intensity and the zeal that they fought with.
Yeah, and today a lot of it is, promoters like to kind of put guys in front of each other and try to make it up a little bit, and it's not as genuine. But with these two guys, they saw each other for so long over such a lengthy period of time that it became genuine, right?
Yeah, it was organic, and it wasn't that they hated themselves as people or each other as people. It was the competitor in front of them. It was the they were all, all 4 of those fighters in the 4 Kings were brands. They were all, and it became that way. They were each their own brand. And the other brand was poison to them. Okay. Ray Leonard's pretty boy, he gets the breaks of everything brand. Tommy Hearns, the Midwest Detroit guy who's, got the grit and whatever, that's his brand. And, Brockton's Marvin Hagler, the steady, true guy that doesn't get the headlines, but is just the guy that stays in a weight class, keeps going. Duran, the crazy Panamanian, right, who's up and down constantly, but he produces brilliant, efforts. They each had their brand, and I think they didn't like the other guy's brand. They just it's no different. I swear, I don't think it's different than I'm a Cubs fan, right? So I don't like the St. Louis Cardinals, but I mean, I don't hate every player in the St. Louis Cardinals, but I can't stand the St. Louis Cardinals. I think that's almost the way it became with them.
Yeah, yeah. They just like you said, it kind of happened organically too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And because of just everything around them, so much attention and focus was around them that, that's what it became.
Okay, so now they're in the ring, right? And the crowd is starting to rev up a little bit, and the first round bell is about to ring. By then the crowd was probably well into it, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. And the way that first round started off, with them walking in and immediately Tommy Hearns lands a monstrous right hand. And it wasn't as if Marvin Hagler staggered backwards, but everyone could see that was a right hand that made a little bit of impact because no punches made an impact on Marvin Hagler, right? I mean, we're so used to seeing people bounce punches off him and nothing seemed to phase him. So that was how it all started. And then Hagler, of course, being Hagler, felt, okay, I better respond. And he started responding, and the war was on.
So you said like there was a sequence there, and like you said, I mean, Hagler was really aggressive. He started coming at. I mean, he just came right after him
Yeah.
and landed a right of his own to start things off. And then Hearns was kind of backed up into the ropes, and they started just throwing bombs. And there was a point where you said, "Hagler is hurt. Hagler is hurt," and Al Michaels said the same. That you guys repeated. In your opinion, how hurt was Hagler at that moment?
He told me later that was as stunned as he's been at a boxing match.
Oh, he did say that.
Yeah, wasn't ready to go down or anything. But I asked him later. I was around Marvin a lot later in life, quite a bit. I mean, we became really close, and he said there was two times in that first round where it was like those are shots. He got hit with. He said it hurt him more. I mean, of course, after that, he would have that famed Mugabe fight that was a war. And he said Tommy hurt him. Mugabe didn't hurt him even though Mugabe landed monstrous punches, he didn't hurt him like Tommy did in that first round. So he was stunned. And I'm loath to even say that a fighter's hurt. I have to feel it's really accurate to say that, but he was stunned with some couple of big punches.
Yeah, because just the way you said it and the way that he reacted, because like you said, Hagler, it was so rare to see Hagler back up. And I think it was a right uppercut that Hearns hit him with.
Yeah, it was the uppercut that really stunned him. Yeah, I think it was Hearns fighting off the ropes, wasn't it?
Yes,
because he counterpunched off those ropes. So, I mean, that was the thing that made that first round, in my opinion, truly amazing. So the big first right hand, Hagler has to get after him. He's throwing caution to the wind, as Marvin Hagler will sometimes do in fights, because he doesn't, he thinks he'll weather the storm. And he was landing really good shots, especially to the body. He was very concentrated on the body. But here's Tommy Hearns off the ropes throwing beautiful counter punches, right? Powerful counter punches. And that was one of those, I think the uppercut was one of those that stunned Hagler.
Yeah. And that was just like, I mean, that first opening sequence, it was the first as the round started, and then they just kind of settled into this, just brawl. Did you, at what point did you think, I can't believe what I'm watching? Did you ever think that?
It was, I think, look, everybody thought it was going to end up being a pretty good fight. I think, and sometimes, as you well know from covering so much boxing, fights you think, oh, this can't miss, they don't end up as perfect as you think they might. It just happens, right? But this was one that, people thought had to end up being pretty good, but nobody could have possibly expected what they did. So yes, when you're watching and here's another, just a sidelight that even demonstrates it. So during the lead into the fight, Al Michaels, who is not he's not the kind of broadcaster that gets super duper duper excited about everything. He's even in his younger days, he wasn't that kind of broadcaster. So I was trying to get the rhythm of what we were to do because I never worked with him, and he was, during the undercard, not as animated, and
Right.
once round one of the Hagler fight came, it was like Jekyll and Hyde, right? He was a different guy at that point. And the other thing I'm thinking about, to be honest with you, even though it's personal, is I'm thinking, oh my God, I spent 2.5 hours working with one rhythm. Now I got another one. This is all different. There's a whole different broadcast thing going on. So I'm like, I got this fight that's insane in front of me. And then I'm thinking about that. But it was okay. I mean, I was glad he got excited. And it was very, and it demonstrates too how exciting it was. So it was staggering. And I don't want to push you ahead to the end of the round, but at the end of the round, I said, and I'm not, you know me from all the years of broadcasting, I'm not really given to hyperbole. And you talk about organic things, it just spilled out of my mouth when I said, this is one of the great middleweight rounds of all time. And who could possibly argue with that statement, right? I mean, you couldn't. And it just came out, because it was, and the interesting thing about that round is it was kind of every portion of the round had something astonishing, even right at the end in the last 20 seconds. And then we haven't even gotten to Tommy Hearns' injury at the beginning of that round. That's another point. But even the third portion of that round, when they at least both slowed down for a moment to kind of get their bearings, they landed big shots right near the end of the round. And what amazes me when I look back on that is Tommy Hearns hurt his right hand, that first right. But if you look at round one and even round two, he's still throwing that right hand. It's not as if he stopped throwing it. It wasn't as much as he might have otherwise, but he was still throwing that punch. And I always think to myself, and this takes nothing away from Marvin Hagler, but what would have happened if Tommy Hearns had not hurt his right hand with that first right hand? I'm not saying he would have won, but the fight might have taken a different complexion,
Yeah. Because it kind of seemed as the round went on, as vicious as it was, and I think you even pointed it out in the broadcast, but, Hagler started kind of soaking up those right hands, kind of walking through them a little more.
A little bit more. And
yeah,
it's a good point. And maybe part of the reason, or it might just have been him, but was they weren't quite landing with the same ferocity, even though they were landing. He did. We did say that. And so it ended up being a round for the ages.
Yeah. At what point did you think, because Larry Merchant said something like, at one point he realized, boom, it's over because Hagler's absorbing that right hand. You know what I mean? He's taking it and he's moving forward. By the end of the round, did you have an idea that, okay, this may be Hagler's fight now? Because
I don't know, because I can't say I definitively thought that, because even in that latter 22nd of the round, Hearns landed some pretty big punches. I mean, you got the sense that Hagler might have a slight upper hand at that point. But here's an important thing to remember. In round two, even though Hagler won the second round, there's a misconception that after round one, oh my God, Hagler just owned him. Well, if you look at round two, and I wrote an article for Ring Magazine, it's in the April issue right now, which I talked about how the CompuBox numbers in round two, very close. And if you look at that round, Tommy Hearns had really good moments in the second round. It wasn't like he had folded his tent. He fought pretty well in the second round. And so I didn't feel like he was completely out of the fight. What was the telling thing to me, though, was the stumbling the fact that he couldn't. We had seen him against Ray Leonard when he got hurt a little bit. What did he do? He became Tommy Hearns, the boxer, and boxed beautifully. And if that was a 12-round fight against Sugar Ray Leonard, he would have been the world champion that night. But it wasn't. So he got caught late in the fight. He couldn't do that against Hagler. His legs were, and then the second story of this fight that's fascinating, the massage that Emmanuel
his handlers
Stewart,
or his hangers on.
Yeah, Emmanuel Stewart came in and saw a couple of his minions massaging Tommy Hearns' legs an hour before the fight, and he had a heart attack over that. And he contended to his dying day that was a factor. Now, whether it was or wasn't, Tommy Hearns wasn't moving like he should. And that, to me, was a telling sign during that second round.
And so going into the third round, and then you had, I think in the third, Hagler was cut.
That's the third story.
Mm-hmm. And so, when that happened, it even though it appeared that Hagler was starting to gain a little bit of an edge, but then the cut happened. So at what point, what did you think? How bad was that cut from your vantage point?
It wasn't a good cut. It was the kind that ultimately could have stopped a fight. You could feel that. And when they looked at it, I think the world would have exploded had they stopped that fight at that point due to that cut, right? I can't even imagine how that would have gone over to the world at large. But it was a bad cut, and it was bad enough so the Hagler knew, okay, I'm in trouble. And here's the other thing about that. Had Tommy Hearns been able to move better for whatever reason in that fight and jab and be more of a boxer and get through rounds, it's very conceivable he could have exacerbated that cut, got himself to a position. And it was never ruled a clash of heads. It was ruled from punches. That probably was from punches. He might have been able to win a decision or stop the fight. Get it stopped and win it by TKO. So Hagler knew he had to get the job done. And, in typical Marvin Hagler fashion, once they looked at that cut and he realized that he was in danger, it was a hell-bent for leather effort that was designed to put Tommy Hearns out.
So describe the final sequence that finally ended the fight. What was going through your mind as that was happening?
Well, the irony is it was a punch that started it that you wouldn't think it would. I think it was a real strong jab that just stunned Hearns. And I remember thinking to myself, that was kind of like somebody else hitting. And of course, Hagler was ambidextrous, so I think it was a jab from the left-handed stance. But that could have been a powerful right hand if he was a righty. And it really got to Tommy Hearns, and then he hit him with a couple punches after that, and put him down. And you got the feeling that once he was down, and again, it's bad form for an announcer, and I didn't do it, and I don't think Al Michaels did either. You never say, "Oh, he's not getting up," because you never know if he's going to get up. But I didn't think he was going to make it through and continue that fight.
What's funny about that is that they only show, for whatever reason, like the overhead view of Hearns as he gets up. So I've always found that it's a kind of hard to tell. We all knew he was hurt, right? You all knew that the fight that was probably going to be stopped and should be stopped. And you said it during the broadcast, they've got to stop this fight. But the overhead angle, you can't really see him stumbling or anything. You know what I mean? You can't really see his eyes. You can only see the above, the above view, the high view, and it's hard to really ascertain how hurt he was.
Yeah, if you have to be honest about what happened as far as the broadcast, that to me was a faux pas. They didn't. The replays of all that could have been more a little bit more enlightening. because when you were there and you saw it from a certain angle, you knew that, it was probably not, that he was in real trouble. But those replays didn't show it as perfectly as it might have. But it just didn't seem like he could. And if they had let the fight go on for a little bit more, I think it would have ended anyways, just shortly after that.
And then afterward, you interviewed Hagler, correct?
Yep.
What I mean, that was the high point of his career.
Yeah, he was. There was a sense of, I felt during that interview, a sense of, remember how hard it was for Marvin Hagler? He had cleaned out the middleweight division against good opponents, but not big name opponents, right? He had beaten Duran, but even that wasn't satisfying because Duran was able to go the distance with him. He clearly won the fight, but the judges, with all due respect, for some reason, Marvin Hagler was not a favorite of judges or boxing officials, which is beyond my comprehension. Most of the judging throughout his career was unfair to Marvin Hagler. I don't know why. I have no idea why. What on earth why would he engender that? It's beyond me. But, going all the way back to the Antifermo fight, I thought the Duran fight was judged poorly. Mugabe, he was almost behind at one of the scorecards, I think. Leonard, it goes without saying whether you think it was a close fight that Leonard won or not, the Jojo Guerra card. So he, the Duran fight didn't feel satisfying to him. And I think he fully expected to do to Duran what Tommy Hearns ended up doing to Duran, knocking him out. He expected to do that. So going into the Hearns fight, he was still an unfulfilled man in boxing, I think. It's part of what fueled him. He felt, I beat all these good guys. I'm not quite getting the covet that I should and the credit I should. He needed a big signature win over somebody like Tommy Hearns, and this was it. And so when we were in the ring, I felt different than other times I'd interviewed Hagler after a fight. He felt satisfied, he felt validated and happy. I mean, just happy as could be. And that was interesting to me because, you could feel a weight had been lifted off his shoulders.
Do you think that was there's a contention out there that really, even though the Mugabe fight was unbelievable as well, but like you say, you could probably describe the Hearns fight as the height of his career, his biggest win, his most satisfying win.
Yeah.
By the time he fought Leonard, it almost seemed like he had kind of lost the zeal to fight anymore.
I think
he might have lost it that night. What do you think?
Yeah, he was. I mean, Hagler was older than his official record listed. Right. We all know that. We don't know. He and Kenny Norton are the two guys that nobody will ever know their real ages when they fought. But clearly they were never the age they were listed. So he was older probably than he was. And remember, he had a long career fighting those fights in Philadelphia against all those tough guys. And he had been around the sport for a long time, saved his money, was secure, and at that moment, I think after that war with Mugabe, in which we saw the fierceness of Hagler, because John the Beast Mugabe, who everybody knew had a great effort in him. When John Mugabe was at his best, he was a monster. He fought his best fight against Marvin Hagler in a weight class that was slightly higher than he'd been fighting at. Not couldn't fill out to be a middleweight, but that wasn't the weight he had been at. He fought the fight of his life and lost. So here's Marvin Hagler at age 30-something, we don't know what, in against the guy called the Beast, who fought the best fight of his life. And if we're thinking it's true that Hagler was starting to lose his zeal for it, Well, here's a guy that we think maybe is starting to lose his zeal for it in the firefight of the century and comes out on top. So now you move past that and you say, okay, and there's and he had gone through all the maybes and maybe nots with the Leonard fight. And so it's conceivable that at that juncture, the Hagler that got in there with Leonard uh, wasn't as motivated as maybe he felt he needed to be. And I think, by the way, without skipping too far ahead, I think that's the reason why he was never tempted to come back or to do a rematch, which Leonard desperately wanted because he knew there was huge money in it. I think Marvin Hagler understood that, that part of my life's over. I can't get myself physically and emotionally and mentally to the point I need to be to perform like I did. So why do it?
And so Hearns were, a lot of people kind of unfairly maybe, say, Hearns lost the two biggest fights of his career, which I always found to be kind of unfair considering almost all his fights were big, right? He fought so many big fights. Where do you think this fight put him in terms of all-time greatness?
Tommy Hearns, there are two. Tommy Hearns, to me, is a really fascinating and oftentimes misinterpreted boxing champion because, of course, as you point out, he lost to Ray Leonard in that brilliant fight in the first fight. Again, a classic fight that goes down as one of the great fights in boxing. He loses to Marvin Hagler, both Hagler and Leonard, arguably among the best fighters that have ever fought in the sport. When you look back at his record, as you made the point, how many important wins he had, Benitez, Duran, Virgil Hill, when nobody thought he could beat Virgil Hill, who was a terrific light heavyweight. I mean, Tommy Hearns kept going up in weight and beating good fighters. If anything is the thing that confounds people about the Tommy Hearns legend, it's the two fights with Iran Barkley. Iran Barkley, we all know, from covering boxing so long, sometimes somebody is your kryptonite.
Yeah. And
Barkley was that because, I announced the first Hearns Barkley fight, and Tommy Hearns was destroyed. And Iran, by the way, at his best, was a fantastic fighter. Sure. Who, by the way, I will go to my grave saying that he won the Duran fight because I think he won the Duran fight. But Tommy was raking him over the coals for 3 rounds or whatever. I forget when the fight ended, the 4th or 5th, just destroying him. Barkley got off a good shot, hurt him, and that was it. Now the second fight was a pitch battle, and I kept thinking in that fight at some point Tommy Hearns is going to take over, and he didn't. It was a very close fight, and he ended up losing the decision. Those two fights are the ones. If those two had never happened, I don't think anybody would be talking about, he lost his 2 most major fights, because he kept going up in weight, winning titles, beating Hall of Famers. He has so many wins against Hall of Fame fighters. And let's be honest, in the rematch with Ray Leonard, he won the fight. They just didn't give it to him. Ended up being a draw.
Right.
9 out of 10 boxing fans that saw the fight will tell you that Tommy Hearns won it.
Right. And even now, people look back at it and I think kind of say, well, he got his revenge, right? He avenged that loss, even though it was a draw. It kind of feels like,
people, from the standpoint of people understanding, he redeemed himself, and he felt like that's probably one of the reasons why I didn't even after it. He wasn't sitting there yelling and screaming. He said it's decision's wrong, but he said, I don't care because I proved my point. So it was all about that to him.
Yeah. Okay, final question. I've asked you this question before, and I'm going to see if your answer's changed.
Wait, it's kind of like it's like when and this happens so much, not to get into it, but with elected officials, we go back to the videotape, right, when they've changed it, flip-flopped, right? So we'll find out who I am today.
We're gonna go back to the videotape if you give me a different answer.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the best fight you've covered?
Well, I don't think this will change. I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty consistent in this. The best fight I've ever announced remains to this day the Castillo-Corrales fight, the first Castillo-Corrales fight. And the reason with this fight as number 2, and the reason for that is because even though that Castillo-Corrales fight, while it was an important fight, did not have the impact on the boxing world of this. I always describe it as Hagler-Hearns times 3, because Hagler-Hearns went 3.5 rounds or whatever, and Castillo went 9.5. And every round in the Castillo-Corrales fight was a gem. Every round was a potential round of the year candidate. Then on top of that, in the 10th round, it was the 9th round, I think, where Corrales goes down twice, loses his mouthpiece. Looks like the fight is over. Well, no, the 10th, I guess. The fight looked like it was over, completely over. And he could have never won a decision at that point, because a point was deducted. He had 2 knockdowns. He was down, 5 points in that round. There was no way he's ever going to win a decision. And he comes back to win, to get a stoppage in that round. Between the fact that it was action-packed and well-fought, plus the fact that you had that amazing drama at the end, that's probably the best fight I've ever announced. Hagler-Hearns is 1A because of all the other factors. Number one, it was, for the time it lasted, it was staggering. And number 2, it had such an impact. And it's part of boxing folklore. I mean, it's become a part of boxing folklore. And that's pretty extraordinary, you know. I mean, not everything gets to do that in any sport, right? You know, you don't get to be something that's going to be remembered as long as fans are thinking about the sport. I just recently participated. A great movie is out now. Pete McCormick's movie, I Am Joe Frazier. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's a phenomenal film. It's on the CW, and I'm sure it's available through there and probably elsewhere. It's a brilliant film, and I participated in it. And the thing about it is it kind of really gives you insight into him. And I feel the same way a little bit about Tommy Hearns as I do Joe Frazier. There's a lot of people that sometimes sell short them as great fighters. And you know, this is, so it feels a little bit you know, that way. But you know, I mean, this was that and what reminded me too is the first Ali Frazier fight is like this Hagler-Hearns fight. It's a moment in history that no one, that and probably the thrill of Noah, nobody that has an even remotely small interest in the sport of boxing, if they don't know about it, somebody will tell them to go look at it, and they will go see it, and it'll be something that, you know, makes an impact on them. So not too many fighters get to participate in something that's going to be long-lasting and historical.
Well, so like I said, 40 years Tuesday, and we hear your voice on 2 of probably the best fights that happened in those 40 years, right?
Well, I mean, there are, of course, all kinds of great fights, but I think those 2 would be in the top 10 for sure. I mean, they probably would be, because I was just lucky to be on hand for both of those. And you don't always get those opportunities, because, as we said, sometimes fights they don't quite live up to their what we think is going to happen. And there are so many great fights. That's why it's always hard to say the best and the whatever, because we've covered and seen so many great fights. But those two are, I'd like to think they're pretty high on the list in terms of fights you want to see. If you said to somebody, if you're interested in boxing and you want to see a couple fights that will pique your interest, those are two that I would send them to.
All right. So what's on your calendar, Al? What do you got coming up?
I will be. I am going to be the next broadcasting I'm going to be doing is probably going to be in early June for the Salida Promotions Big Time Boxing USA series on DAZN. I'm going to be doing that. There's another fight in May. It hasn't been announced yet that I'm going to be doing. That's also going to be appearing on DAZN. And I'm ramping up. I'll be pretty soon have an announcement about the music shows I do here in Vegas. I'm going to do it looks like I'm going to do a little residency here where I'm going to do a once a month show, which I've kind of resisted that because the boxing schedule sometimes makes it so that you can't. But the people I'm working with have said, well, we don't have to do it on the specific week of the month. When you know your schedule, we can shift it to another day during the month. So I'm going to do a monthly, which I'm kind of happy about because I've been back into that so much that it'll be fun. And everybody always asks me, when can I come and see a show? And then I don't always have a specific time for them. So I'm going to do that and some other projects. So, but the two boxing matches I got coming up are those. And of course, people can check out my Big Time Boxing show on the Salida Promotions YouTube channel, where we have many guests on and from the boxing world, as you guys do, and talk to them about the sport of boxing.
All right. I'm one of these days I'm going to catch your show in Vegas. I'm going to plan my next Vegas outing around your show, especially if it's now monthly.
I hope you can. I would love it if you could come out. We'd have a fun time. And there is a boxing trivia segment usually in the show, which I'm pretty confident you will walk home with a nice prize from that. Because,
I don't know. There's a lot of knowledgeable fans in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll know one of the answers.
Right, Al. Thanks a lot for coming on, and we'll see you down the road.
All right, take care. Always a pleasure to visit with you.
Thank you.